In this episode of Beyond MD, we talk about the rent section of the buy, renovate, rent, and refinance method of real estate investing. If you're new to these episodes, my guest is the one and only Quentin D'Souza, who is a true expert in the space. He's one of the most respected voices in Canadian real estate investing, and he is a mentor to many. He started as a schools teacher, started investing in real estate in the early 2000s, and then rapidly grew a portfolio, eventually went full-time real estate investing, and his portfolio is now worth more than $125 million. He founded Apple Ridge Homes, which uses the BRRRR strategy on long-term rentals across Southern Ontario, and he's also the founder of the Durham Real Estate Investing Group. So I take some time to talk about my first rental property in this episode and how I found my first tenant last year. I thought I was taking all the steps that everybody else was taking, but after talking to Quentin, it turns out that I missed out on some very important steps. Quentin gives a great roadmap for people trying to fill their rental properties, and he mentions a lot of valuable resources along the way, so this is going to be very useful. Quentin also talks about property management, and it's in his answer here, this is where he really shines and his true north for real estate investing comes out. It's a very powerful message, so please stay tuned to the end. And after the interview, I will also talk about a few lessons that I learned with my most recent real estate investment, which was a small triplex in Kingston, Ontario, so please stay tuned to the end. You can listen to this episode after listening to the previous two episodes, or you can also listen to it in isolation because I think it's useful content for anybody trying to find a tenant. So please enjoy my conversation with Quentin D'Souza. Okay, Quentin, moving on now, we're going to talk about, should we talk about renting the property out or refinancing it? You rent first, then you refinance, right? Or what's the order of things? Yeah,
it really is up to you. I prefer renting it first because then you can use the rents to offset the debt coverage ratio of the property, as opposed to not having them. So,
can you just quickly give us a synopsis of the debt coverage ratio, though, just so people know what we're talking about?
Yeah. So what ends up happening is when you're purchasing a property or when you're refinancing a property, what's going to happen is that you're going to want to look at this is how much the property costs. This is the mortgage on the property, and this is what the these are my expenses, and this is what the income is from the property, and probably what usually a financial institution who is going to put mortgages on rental properties, they probably want to see you have at least a 1.1 debt coverage ratio. That means you get about 10% more income than what you're spending every month, right? And when we're in commercial properties and multifamily, that's like 0.2 or 0.3. So and that makes it easier for banks to lend you money, because they know that you're going to get more income than you are going out. Does that mean that they won't give you a mortgage? No. But what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, he earns, $200,000 on his job, and that allows him to offset this. And so because of that, we'll be able to give you the mortgage. What happens is, like, when you buy properties that are cash flow negative, it becomes harder and harder for you to add more and more properties because you have to use your income to supplement the financing of the property, and you can get maxed out pretty quickly. But if you end up with cash flow positive properties, a bank is going to give you more and more loans because they see you're an investor who is knows that they're going to be getting positive cash flow each month. Well, I'm definitely going to give you another mortgage, right? As many as I can, up to 5 or 10 or whatever it is. But if I'm coming back to them and I'm showing them I'm like my debt coverage ratio is like 0.6 because I have to put $500 every month just to cover the mortgage and the insurance and the property taxes, and that's not even like condo fees. Condos fees are can really change that, and you can't include principal payment as cash flow. Okay, that's my rule. I know that a lot of realtors like to do that when they give you your numbers, like principal pay down means that's at the end of the month you're positive. No, that's because you still have to put money in at the end of the month if you're counting just the the mortgage pay down. It's before. It's not including that mortgage pay down. Your mortgage cost is whatever it costs at the end of the month. That's what it is. Plus your insurance cost, plus your property taxes, plus maintenance, repairs, vacancy, and property management. After those, you should still be positive. If you're not, then to me that's not cash flow positive. And it's harder to find because you have to work at it. But that's what I've been doing. That's all the type of properties that I buy. And today is exactly the same. I only buy properties that are cash flow positive, right?
Thank you for summarizing it that way and outlining all of those costs that we need to take into account month to month, because I think without that understanding, we could end up in a situation where we aren't cash flow positive. So thank you, Quentin, for that. Now, my first rental property, I'll kind of tell you what I did to secure a tenant, and you can tell me what I did well and what I should have done. So I posted an ad myself on rentals.ca. I took some pictures of faucets, some nice touches, things like that. And then I actually asked all the tenants to reach out to me directly. I gave a video tour to one that I thought would be the best fit. And what I asked for a letter of employment to confirm employment. I asked for a credit score. I didn't go and check it myself. I saw a letter. It was the highest credit score I'd seen. So I kind of just went with it. And then the other thing I did was I asked for references, and I did follow through and contact each reference to get an assessment of that individual. And so far it's been going well, but take what I've given you. What did I do well? What could I have done better to make sure that I'm landing the best tenant possible?
All right. So first off, when you started to post your ad, did you check on Google where people are finding properties in that area? So every area is going to be different. So for example, if you were in Windsor, for example, I would put Windsor, apartments for rent into Google and see which site actually comes up first, because you might be putting your money into a website that doesn't generate very many leads. Right? For a lot of places, it's Kijiji, but in some places, it's not Kijiji at all. Right. Okay. And so if you're not advertising where people are looking, they're not seeing it. Right. The other thing is, to remember that the purpose of an ad is for people to be able to read it. And if you don't have a good headline, people aren't going to read it. So try to set your headline apart from other people. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to say 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Right.
Right.
Because that's right. Because they're really basic. How about great parks, great what's the benefit of living in that area? Is it right beside the university, or is it walk to shopping? Whatever something different. You can still put 3-bed, 2-bath because it's going to be part of the criteria anyways of the website. They'll be able to see that. But do something in your title that attracts people to the ad, right? Clicks on it.
Yep.
Next thing is, once they've clicked on it, I would put, this is an opportunity. We're not limited by space on the internet. Everybody they put one little paragraph. Focus on. You can put some of the features of the property. A feature is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, unfinished basement. Those are features. You want to focus on the benefits of the property. What are the benefits of living there? Park across the street, walk 2 kilometers to the elementary school, walk 3 kilometers to the secondary school, 600 meters from shopping. What are the benefits to living there? I can go to the gym. The community center is walking distance. What are some of the other benefits of living there? It could be entertain your friends with this beautiful backyard on the deck, right? All those things. So focus on the benefits. The next thing is, so you had them contact you directly. What I would do is I would have a questionnaire that they filled out, and instead of them contacting me directly, so I would have a list of different questions that I would have them answer, probably about 10 questions. And it would be, why, some of the questions would be around, why are you searching for a unit, right? Do you have pets? Do you what do you have? Like, you can ask a whole bunch of questions that help to filter, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they answer it or not is a good filter at the, right at the beginning, right? Because everything that you do about this process should be filtering. You should be filtering away people, which I think you did. So like by only, you gave a video tour of one tenant that you preferred and you rented to them. So yeah. I see that's a great way of doing it. But I think like if you had the questionnaire at the beginning, and then you could break it down into a few people. And then what I would do is I would book the showings one after the other, so they can see one person coming in and the other person leaving. Show the demand of the property, right? So you want to back to back everything and try to do it at the same time, and that way you've got that demand. The other thing that you did was do you have an application form, like an in-depth application?
No, I didn't have anything like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I would have an application form. So I would have like a full application form, list the last two landlords, not the last landlord, because the last landlord may want to get rid of them. So the last two landlords is important. That way, because in Ontario, you have to be careful. If you get into a landlord-tenant board situation, it could be 8 months before you get them out, right? And so you really have to be careful about who you put in. So if you have two landlords, you call the landlord before and the landlord before that landlord. And then that way you have a better sense of who they are. You also want to include references in there for sure. You also want to have information about I ask them questions like, have you ever declared bankruptcy? Now, why do I ask a question like that? Because I want to see if they're honest with me or not, because I'm going to do a credit check anyways, and it's going to show me it. It's an answer that I know. So I ask them a couple questions that I know and not know. I ask them about pets. I ask them about who else is going to be staying in the unit. So I have some questions in the application. I'm also asking them for how they get money, what are their jobs, what do they do, right? I want all of that information. I'll include even putting account information in on that. Whether they give it to me or not, it's up to them. But I do need their driver's license number and their social insurance number, or at least their driver's license number, because I do a credit check. So gotcha. I have there's a number of services out there that allow you to do that, because if they provide me, do you know how many times that I've gotten false credit reports? People have faked their credit report. I've gotten so many times.
Wow.
I've gotten fake paychecks. I've gotten fake job reference letters. I've got just tons and tons of stuff that are out there, right? So our process is like 25 steps for filtering people, right? I created a book on it because there's so many steps.
Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes as well, because I think this is really useful information. So Quentin, I want to back up for a second. That questionnaire, how do you make that available to people? Is it part of the ad? They click on it, or once they send an email, you respond with an email back being like, please fill out the questionnaire? How do you do that?
No. We're not at a questionnaire yet. So first is the first questionnaire is at the beginning where it's a filter. Next is we have 3 or 4 people that we're actually willing to show the unit to. At the time when we're talking to them, we're going to make sure that what they're saying and what their story is the same, right? Because we want to ensure that everything lines up, like what they've said in their questionnaire and what they, how they're demonstrating. And I also want to see how they present themselves as people in the unit. Then at that point is when you would hand them the application, and then you would ask them for the details. So paychecks. We do a lot of different things. So We'll get them to do their credit score, but we'll also pull the credit score. We use a few different services. One is called Rentify, which we actually have the tenant put their bank account connection in, and it searches their bank account for past transactions over the last 12 months. So we can tell if they had any government payments, or if they've had any pet charges that are on there, or we can see if they had any NSFs, or how many times their account was negative. Because so that's one of the tools that we use as part of our process, and it tells us information that we can't get from them in addition to what's in the application. So so the application is, once we like them, is when they get the application, and then it's the processing of the application afterwards.
So you use Rentify, and then you also mentioned a resource or two to perform a credit check yourself. What do you use to do that?
There's a couple of different systems that are out there. Front Lobby is one. We use. There was a couple of other. It's off the top of my. I have a leasing agent that works with me that does the leasing, so I can't think of the name off the top of my head. Front Lobby would be one. There's quite a few others.
Last two questions in this segment, and then we'll move on. But you mentioned earlier in the interview that there are A-class, B-class, C-class, and D-class tenants, but you mentioned B-class tenants being the sweet spot. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, one is like D-class tenants or C-class tenants even. What I find is that they're really rough on the units. They're going to stay in the unit for probably forever, and that's not what I want in a unit. I'm actually looking for people who are, working, have a job. Perhaps they're looking to move up in the future, or perhaps they're going to stay in the unit for like a little bit longer. What I find is that I can get good rents for them, but I can also ensure that they will be moving along in a couple of years. Right? Gotcha. It's the same. And A-class tenants can be very similar, but I just find that the turnover is a lot more. So they turn over faster than the B-class tenants. Because you have to remember, rent control in Ontario is something that prevents people from moving along, right? Because it protects the people who are already renting units. It doesn't help anybody else. It helps the people who are renting units. So in Ontario, if you have units that aren't turning over, you actually reduce the value of your building. Because you go back to, let's say you have a triplex or a duplex and your rents are so low, it's going to be hard for somebody to buy that building from you. It actually reduces the value of it. And that transfers out to everything. I just don't think that the public understands that, and so you have to understand that when you're buying these assets. And also, I think that there's that B-class tenant. I think they really respect the units a little bit more. I find that A-class tenants are too whiny, and they want it's just there's a little scratch on my wall. It's just too much. I'm not too high maintenance for me. I would go crazy, right?
Okay, last thing in the rental section is, based on your experience, can you offer your take on property management, both from the perspective of managing the property on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, and then also helping to find a tenant to fill the unit, to fill a vacant unit? On the latter, I'm a little bit mixed, because although I've never used property management to fill a space, my sense is no one's going to care about finding the ideal tenant as much as me. But then again, they're going to be managing the place day to day. So I'd love your take on property management.
Yeah, my take is hire a property manager. Right? I did it myself for a while. So when I started, I did the property management myself. That's why I wrote the books. Really, like the property management book was to if I pass away, instructions to my wife on how to manage the property, which she probably wouldn't do anyways. She would just sell it. But the intention is to understand how it's done but not to do it yourself, because your highest and best use, you have to think about yourself as highest and best use. What is the best use of your time?
100%.
You know, I don't, like when I started, I was painting walls. I was, you know, probably washing floors. I was doing all this stuff that I would never do today, because it's the difference between having a hobby and running a business. And that's something that is very clear to me, but wasn't clear to me before. And if you want to do well in this, you need to take out things that consume your time, that you can pay somebody less than what it would cost you to do. And you have to understand the value of your time. So when I was doing coaching and consulting for real estate investors, I would charge $500 an hour. And I had no problem. I don't do that anymore. It's not worth my time anymore, because I understand the value of my time. You're not going to see me going in and doing those things. And property management is one of those roles that are a $20 an hour role. That's what they are. They don't get paid as much as you think because of the amount of time. Now, it's different if it's a single family home or like a townhouse. But if you start to get to 2, 3, 4 units, there is work that's involved. And you may be saving money, but you're killing your time. And this is not why I invest in real estate, because to take up more of my time. It's to create more time for me. So you hire people to help you to do that. It's okay to start off that way, especially your first couple of units. Like, do it so you understand it, but as quickly as you can, move it away from you and focus on acquiring another unit or doing something else. Go travel, go enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's a return on life too. It's not just, return on money. So like whatever it is, but property management is one of those things that you should outsource, and most people don't, and it affects their ability to scale. It stops them from scaling because they feel like they don't have enough time. I've talked to investors who have 4 or 5 properties and they're like, I can't do this. I'm like, well, who's your property manager? Oh, I'm doing it all myself. Well, there's your answer, right? And it affects, it just affects your ability to continue to grow, and you get frustrated. And sometimes you need somebody else between you and the tenant, because you may walk into a property and see that there's like a mess on the floor from a dog or a cat, and you feel like inside that you're going to flip out, right? But you have a third party in between you, like a property manager goes in there. This is what they deal with all the time. They go in, they make them fix the problem. But you go home and you're like, oh, they did this and that, right? And you're like, it takes up 6 hours of your time because you're thinking about it, right? But that's not what you need to do. What you need to do is acquire assets that continue to pay you every month and that increase in value, right? And then use those to help you to, improve your lifestyle. That's the key, right? It's not.
I think that's really well said. That's really well said. It's all about kind of how you use your time the best, and you want to make sure you're using your time productively. So just so we're clear, I'm on the same page in terms of using property management. I just wonder, in terms of filling a place, am I best equipped to fill a unit with the right tenant and then let them manage it? I sometimes wonder, but in terms of the day-to-day management, 100%. I think you're.
What about
I
those
totally
steps that I told you about that you didn't know about, right?
Yeah. It's more involved than I initially thought. So
right,
yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
the thing, you know, and I think an experienced property manager can help. Now there are bad property managers out there, and I've said the same thing as you when it comes to like they're not going to treat the property as I would have treated it, and that's fair, but it's the wrong mindset if you want to grow, because like you know what, my secretary or my assistant, I could probably do the work that she does better than she does, but I don't do it, and that's the point. Right? The point is not 100%. Doing it, right?
100%. And Quentin, I think this is something that's been holding me back for so long, because just given what I do day to day, given how I've trained, my mindset for the longest time has been, okay, I need to be a perfectionist, or I feel like in so many ways I can do things better than somebody else, but it's far from the truth. The truth is I need to leverage people's skill sets and allow them to to spend time doing what they do best so I can focus on my time and energy on what I do best. So all your points are very well taken. And just so people understand, like a price point for property management, my understanding is 7% a month is pretty standard, right? As long as they're covering the whole package.
Yeah, it depends on what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Like in a building, it might be lower, like depending on the number of units. So let's say you had 4 units versus somebody who has a single family home. It may be 9% or 10% for the single family, but it may be 7% for the fourplex. So that's in effect. It also depends on the area. If you're in a small town where there's not much options for property management, they may charge 10 or 12%, right? So all of those things come into play. So also it depends on the size of the operation and the services that they offer, because they'll have like, gold, silver, and bronze, right, level of management, and they each one is a different price point, and they all have different types. So it just depends on what they offer too.
So I invested in a triplex in my hometown of Kingston in fall 2022. The property had been on the market for over a year, the price had been coming down, interest rates were going up. I thought I could make a lowball offer, which worked, but not everything after that was smooth, and I will talk about some of the mistakes I made in a future episode, but I want to share a few lessons today. The first one is how it can be really important to leverage other people's skill sets so that you can free up your own time. And this is specifically speaking about property management. So I knew right off the bat that it was the right decision to go for property management, despite this property being in my hometown, because it's 3 hours away, and I didn't want any headaches. I didn't want to complicate my life. So I interviewed a property manager. I asked them as many questions as I could. I toured the property with them, got a good feeling overall, and then signed a contract. And then when it came time to managing the property and trying to fill out the 1 unit that was vacant, I found myself naturally trying to be quite active in the process. So I would tell the manager, hey, I can take some pictures and send them to you. I can reach out to the tenants, interview them if you want. I can even share the ad on different websites like rentals.ca. And the property manager just told me, like, listen, you have signed on for a hands-off package. None of the things that you're talking about are in fact your responsibility. Like, leave it to us. That's why you're paying us. And I think I was behaving the way I was for 2 reasons. One is that I was leaning on my very recent experience of my first rental property, which is a condominium in Kitchener-Waterloo. That one I manage on my own. I've got a great tenant, but then again, it's a condo, it's easier. And the other reason is, I think for a good chunk of my life, especially through medicine, and I think this can apply to other people in medicine too, at least in the conversations that I've had, because we strive for high achievement, we strive for perfectionism, I think sometimes there can be a point where we think that we can do no wrong and that others may not be able to perform tasks up to the same level. But again, when I think about why I'm investing in real estate, I'm trying to free up my own time. I'm trying to generate an alternative form of revenue that I don't have to actively work for. And the right decision, absolutely, when a property is out of town, is to leverage other people's skill sets and in fact utilize their expertise. A property manager is going to know much more about managing a property and filling up a property with tenants than I will. So overall, my experience has been positive, and it's something that I encourage others to think about. The other thing that I learned when investing in this property is it's critical to know your market. And although I grew up in Kingston, there's a few things I didn't really think about. So I made the offer on Labor Day weekend, and I wanted to close soon. So I said 30 days. I wanted to really hit the ground running. I wanted to fill the 1 vacant unit out of 3. The other 2 were already filled up, but I wanted to fill up the 3-bedroom as soon as possible. I felt like I could do that really quickly, even after a few minor renovations, but things just took a lot longer than I expected. And when you're in a university market like Kingston, especially when you're renting out in an area that's going to gravitate to people who are linked to Queen's University, or any university market for that matter, there are going to be periods of the year when the rental market is really hot. So these are the months leading up to May and September. And then a lot of the rest of the year can be quiet. So after reflecting on my experience, I think it would have been worthwhile to, in fact, extend the time in which I close. So instead of 30 days, I should have prolonged it as much as possible. And the reason for that is I would have saved money along the way. Because I closed early, I was carrying the mortgage for a longer amount of time, and therefore I lost a bit of money on that. So something I learned along the way. the importance of knowing your market. So I hope the content in this episode is useful. If you're finding these episodes useful, I would be truly grateful if you could share this podcast with 2 people that you know. All of the social media links for myself and Quentin are in the show notes, and you can reach out to me at any point at beyondmdpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for the final episode on BRRRR real estate investing. And until then, stay well and stay savvy.